hello. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Chat with C3S. My name is Angeline Johnson. I am the CEO of C3S Consulting. And with me, I have one of our amazing associates, Dr. Naketa Jones, who is joining us once again to have a conversation about AI. And this conversation is primarily about AI and nonprofits. So, as you all should know, if you are listening into a C3S webinar, we are a community development organization that absolutely believes in service to others and utilizing our skills and talents and expertise to help enhance and improve communities. And we know that it is our nonprofit sector that has truly taken this charge on to really be conduits to make a difference in communities. And as we're having this conversation about AI and AI's impact in our professional spaces, we absolutely want to take time to talk about AI and the impact of AI in our nonprofit space. So with that, we want to welcome you to this coffee and chat. Welcome, Dr. Jones. Good to see you again.
You as well, Angeline. I want to first just say thank you so much for being bold and brave enough to have this conversation on your platform. I think that for someone like you who has looked at this and decided that this is an important conversation to have and step forward to have it is brave, is ambitious, and I want to thank you for allowing me to come on and talk about AI on your platform. And as you know, this is a very important conversation to have that I don't think enough of us are having. So I want to just say thank you for allowing us to really talk and be candid about this.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Jones. And thank you. Thank you for being willing to have this conversation and share your knowledge, your expertise, your experience, your exploration of this topic. I do have to say, it is a vulnerable space to be because I don't have all of the answers. And I know you will say too, you don't have all the answers, we know, but you are definitely further along in this than I am. But like what you shared, it is a very important topic. AI is a major aspect of our personal lives, of our professional lives, and it's the responsible thing to do is to become more aware and informed of how AI is impacting our professional spaces as we are engaging in the work that we do every day. So thank you for what you do.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
So for those of you who are joining us, you may realize that we're on a slightly different schedule. We actually planned initially to have had this conversation about AI and nonprofits last week, and then we were going to use this week for having a live Q&A. However, we had to make some adjustments and we had to do a pivot. So we are having our conversation about AI this week, and we will not have our live this time, but we will take the feedback and the thoughts and perspectives that have been shared previously and give some added thought and conversation about that as a part of this current webinar. So we want to thank you all again for joining us, and we look forward to going in deeper with AI in nonprofit spaces. So I will begin by reflecting back on a previous conversation, Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones and I had an opportunity to have another colleague of ours join us, Dr. Dale Gines from the International Economic Development Council, who talked about AI and economic development last webinar that we had. And in that conversation, we also talked about nonprofits and the impact of AI in nonprofits even then. So we're going to take a moment to share more of that conversation. That part of the conversation was not included with what we talked about with economic development, but we did have some conversation about nonprofits and AI as well with Dr. Guines. So let's take a moment to hear some of that.
And people that have limited access to funding. Imagine how much cheaper that is. One of my colleagues, Dr. Christy Carter, who's working with me on some research around Black women, she said her grant writer flaked on her, and she ended up doing what her grant writer was going to do in 30 minutes using ChatGPT. She said in 2 months it saved her $10,000 just using that. So when we start thinking about community development as we know it, so not these federal agencies, but from the hood, from people that are going out grassroots, community organizers, small nonprofits that are trying to make change, the ability to leverage artificial intelligence to reduce the costs that it takes to help scale and grow your organizations or analyze different things is so powerful. But if we're not putting it in their hands and we're not teaching it, we're not educating them, then all of a sudden now they're competing with other organizations that may not be from our communities for those same pools of funding that are probably using it, or even if they're not using it, they've already demonstrated they've had more network access and capital kind of deploy to creating writing grants and doing studies and analysis. So we need to get Black and brown people ahead of the curve. And right now, I don't see enough energy in the space to be able to do that.
So what a rich conversation. And we want to say thank you again to Dr. Dale Guines for sharing his perspectives and his experience and his thoughts about AI and the impact in nonprofit spaces. And Dr. Jones, thank you again for your contribution to that conversation, even on our last webinar, as we talked about AI and community development. So moving on to our topic today and getting ready to do our deeper dive into AI in the nonprofit space. Again, as we've shared, we know that our nonprofits are key to being able to make a difference and have impact in community and in society. And the nonprofit space is not removed from the impact of AI and its relevance and its prevalence within nonprofit spaces. So, Dr. Jones, you have written a blog that talks about AI and AI within the nonprofit space. Can you share more about the blog that you wrote about AI for good and how nonprofits can harness AI to change the world?
Absolutely. So, in this article, I wrote it about a year ago, and I was really wanting to focus on how can nonprofits use this powerful tool to kind of get a leg up in a sense. We understand that nonprofits, along with their for-profit counterparts, even government, they tend to struggle with donations, especially around this time. A lot of nonprofits struggle with pulling in those donations that they were seeing when economic times were different. Also with membership, also with being able to apply for grants and really be competitive. So I really thought that AI was this sort of tool that can help nonprofits kind of be on back on track in terms of raising funds, in terms of finding money that align with their mission, as far as being able to pinpoint what the problems are and really address those based upon finding what the needs are. And AI can do those things, right? So I really wanted to focus on how can nonprofits leverage AI in terms of being able to analyze data, in terms of being able to really find where the money is and apply for it very quickly. I have a nonprofit, and I know for you, it's important to be able to sustain your nonprofit also with grant funding, with being able to find donors, with being able to really identify problems and how to address those. And so I've used AI for research. I've used AI to help assist me on writing grants. And that's becoming the norm, which is really interesting. It's almost like we're expected to then use these tools to leverage funds, to find where the money is. And I wanted nonprofits to be able to not be afraid of using these tools. We come from an era, at least I come from an era where we were expected to use our resources, which were, our ability to write and think and pull, information and be able to consolidate that into a well-written RFP or grant application. But now we can use AI, and it's expected in a sense to use these tools. And so I really wanted to encourage nonprofits to go ahead and take advantage of these tools and use them responsibly, but to also be cautious as well. Some of the caution that I wanted to provide was that when you are using these tools, understand that ChatGPT, for example, or a lot of these other large language models are open. So they're using your data to train on them. So be cautious on what data you add to it. For example, we might want to analyze data. We might want to put in demographic information. We might want to try to figure out where to go and who to serve. But if you are using your sensitive data to upload into these large language models, you are compromising privacy. So I wanted to make sure nonprofits are cautious when they're using these tools, but explore. And also larger nonprofits are already, using these tools to write RFPs. So while we're sitting there doing the research and finding the right words to put together to be, to make sure that we are providing what we need to for the reviewers to review our application, a lot of these large organizations, these nonprofits are already, turning in these applications 1 or 2 weeks at a time, at a rate where we can do it in a month or two without AI's tools and resources. So there's data analytics that, we can use to analyze our data. We can do research quickly. We can put those words together where we might have struggled with from time to time, but making sure that we're aligning our mission, with the nonprofits, or I'm sorry, aligning our nonprofit mission with the goals of the application. The AI can do that as well. So make sure you're using these tools with being cautious at the same time.
Dr. Jones, as professionals in community services and in social work and in spaces that are looking to enhance and improve the public good, as nonprofit leaders, it's important that we're aware and involved and engaged with those leading entities that have influence and impact in the space that we work. So as a nonprofit, we should all be, or as those working in nonprofits, we should all be aware of entities such as Candid, entities such as GuideStar and Foundation Center. And if you're not, let's do a recap of what those organizations are and how AI is already engaged and a part of how they function. So GuideStar is the premier, I would say, entity that is utilized for being able to really assess nonprofit organizations. It's almost utilized as a vetting tool, if you will, for organizations where your 990s are reported and uploaded. They have ranking and tracking measures to really be able to assess the vitality and the legitimacy of nonprofit organizations. The Foundation Center is an entity that looked at funding as well. Well, in 2019, those two entities merged and created Candid, which is now a leading entity that takes on those responsibilities that both GuideStar and Foundation Center held. Candid has shared how it is utilizing AI and how it does the work that it does. So they released an article entitled AI at Candid back in August of 2023. And again, the article is entitled AI at Candid, Powering Technologies to Support the Sector's Lasting Success. And we'll share that link because I think it's very important that nonprofits realize how organizations like Candid is utilizing AI. Candid is the holder of the foundation database that helps with finding grants and does grant searches and the RFP process and supports that. They have shared that they absolutely are utilizing generative artificial intelligence with how it does the work that it does to support nonprofits and nonprofit advancement and fundraising. And in this article, which again, we'll share the link in our information about this particular episode, it talks about how it uses machine learning for tagging new grants and new grant opportunities and classifying grant opportunities that are presented to nonprofits. And they also talk about how for their foundation directory, that is an AI-driven system. and platform.
Mhm.
And not only is it an AI-driven system and platform with regards to being able to categorize and analyze and the grants that are coming in, it's also a system that as organizations create their own profiles, that data and information is being put through the AI process. It's being used to shape and frame how RFPs will be generated. It's being used to create personalized narratives about individual organizations and the types of grants, types of fundings, the nature of the organization, and then utilized to match those organizations to potential funding opportunities, or utilized to help inform how Candid creates RFPs. So again, in this major entity that is an aspect of nonprofit work, AI is engaged. And as they are shared in this article from 2023, they are in a period of experimentation with, as we are engaging with their platform as nonprofit organizations, that information that's going into that platform is being used to help them to better frame how they will continue to utilize AI as a tool to support their efficiencies. So in recognizing that, can you share more of your thoughts again about AI? And if you're talking about nonprofits, you absolutely have to talk about fundraising and grant searches and RFP responses. Can you share how AI shows up in that process for nonprofits when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to identifying opportunities, when it comes to responding to opportunities once identified? How does AI fit into that?
Absolutely. So, when you talk about what Candid is doing with nonprofits and for nonprofits, I think personalization in terms of what are the specific needs that my nonprofit can meet, and what are the problems that are out there that I can solve, and then how can I find those people to help me solve it. And then how can I find the funding and who holds the funding that can get me there quickly? So when I think of AI and what these platforms are doing in terms of anything from nonprofits to education to for-profits to industries, I now see the trend of AI is really helping us to really go and narrow our focus and become more personal. So when it comes to donors, I talked a little bit about how it's kind of hard now, and I'm hearing nonprofits saying that they're struggling with donors who are able to provide funding and support and stability for nonprofits years ago are now starting to dwindle down because of how what the landscape is in terms of our economy right now. So we need to, as nonprofit owners, as nonprofit organizations, need to figure out how can I still sustain my organization and pinpoint and find my donors, and not only find my donors, but be more flexible. So AI is allowing nonprofits to help us do that. So it's the matching that AI can do, and not just the matching, but it's kind of going into those nuances of, well, I have limited funds, but I want to support this initiative, but not that initiative. So donors are right now really being cautious and really being very thoughtful as to how they're going to fund and support the nonprofits that they believe in. So I think matching, I think personalization. There's so many platforms out there that can really pinpoint what the problem is and who is willing to help address those problems with dollars, and how can my nonprofit align with those very quickly. So instead of kind of like shooting in the dark, trying to, solicit donations, they're really personalized, they're really nuanced, and they're really thoughtful. So nonprofits can definitely leverage that, leverage AI to get to the money quickly, and not just the money, but making sure that their mission is aligning and they can be more flexible with the dollars and the requests for funds and donations as well. So there was a study out of Stanford just recently in 2024 that said 50% of nonprofits are now using AI, and 76% are trying to figure out how they can use AI to, increase donor donations, to increase engagement, and to also figure out what grants to apply for. So AI is one of those things where it's completely transformational, and it's going to touch and is now pretty much touching everything that we do. So I think it's really important to figure out which platforms that nonprofits can get on board with, how to use these platforms, and really leverage the ability to be more nuanced when it comes to requesting dollars and also requesting donations.
Thank you for highlighting that Stanford study. That is a very recent study. It just came out last month.
Yeah.
Their article sharing about their partnership and their findings. And that was Stanford University Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. I think they have a whole center that's focusing in on that. And something else that is interesting about that study that they found with those that they were able to connect to is that it was education nonprofits that seemed to be ahead of the curve with engaging with the utilization of AI. And I guess that's not surprising. It's the education space. They're supposed to be aware of trends and things of that nature. So they have more quickly engaged and involved themselves in AI and the utilization of AI to support their missions. So part of our conversations when it comes to AI, we've talked about concerns and biases that are a part of AI that are inherent in AI and how to avoid those. Thinking about the biases that exist as we are still entering into the space of AI, the technology is still being developed. We've talked about in our previous episodes how the regulation is not there yet. How should nonprofits enter into the space or continue to engage into the space of AI when it comes to being mindful of some of the biases that exist in the technology? What is your recommendation on how they could approach that for those that are utilizing AI? And those who are
Yeah.
preparing to utilize AI, what do they need to be mindful of with that in that regard?
Yeah, so I just believe that nonprofits are really the heart of the society. We as nonprofit owners, we go into nonprofits for a mission, and we tend to, or we should, I believe, wear that mission on our sleeve. And so, in saying that, I believe that nonprofits has a unique opportunity or responsibility, to however you look at it, to really hold industries accountable for the good that they're doing and the damage that they are leaving behind. It's almost like nonprofits are, as far as how I see it, are the ones who I believe should not just wait on government to regulate or to provide guardrails, or to be the conscious, or the moral compass, of this era that we're in. I believe that nonprofits have that ability and that unique ability to do that. I believe that it's partially our responsibility to say, wait a minute, we have to have a conscious, right? We have to have like a moral guidelines on how to do this. One of the things I can say though, as far as industry, is that Microsoft did put out some guidelines on how to be more responsible and hold themselves accountable in terms of like audits, in terms of assessments. And so we'll put a link in the chat, but I think Microsoft has done a good job. But again, it's industry trying to regulate industry. So are they doing that really well? Or should it be someone outside trying to regulate and audit and hold them accountable? So I think that nonprofits has this unique opportunity and responsibility to kind of be the heart and pulse of AI, in a sense where we're always talking about how AI can, create videos with text and how it can do all these remarkable things with, technology. But what about the human being? What about the human that's using it? So we usually hear this saying of either, understand how to use or you will be used yourself. So I believe that nonprofits should be protecting the ones who essentially can and will be used, by data collection, by using their information pretty much against them. So so yeah, I just believe that nonprofits really should take that stance of, saying, okay, I understand that we're in this industry that's completely changing and shifting with technology, but what about the human being? What about the ones who aren't privy to technology? What about the ones who don't have access to technology? And that's where ethics comes in. That's so let me give you an example. I went about 2 months ago. I went to ChatGPT and I just said, or actually, it wasn't in ChatGPT, then it was Dolly, but it was outside of ChatGPT. So I went to Dolly and I just said, in a prompt, I just said, give me an image of a CEO of a large organization. And so I wanted to see what image it was going to give me, right? And so it gave me a middle-aged white male with a little bit of gray hair, in a suit, tie, and I asked for 4 images, the same exact thing. This was about 2 or 3 months ago. And this was in Dolly. This was OpenAI's Dolly. So then I saw, oh, okay, so now Dolly is integrated into ChatGPT right now, right? So of all the advancements and all the work that responsible AI is doing, I thought, okay, well, maybe it's changed some. Let me go and put in the same prompt. I asked the same prompt, give me an image of a CEO of a large company. And it gave me back almost the exact same thing. 4, 5, 6 prompts later, the exact same image. And so I thought, wow, it couldn't give me an image of a African American woman or even a woman in a sense. So, we haven't gone very far in terms of like making sure that it's providing the images and the content that is reflective of the population. And I think that's where we come in terms of wanting to hold these tools responsible to say, wait a minute, you can't just completely look over me. I need to be included.
Dr. Jones, thank you for sharing that example. And that is so key to this conversation when it comes to the utilization of AI in nonprofit spaces. Because again, the purpose of a nonprofit is to address some sort of societal, well, not all, but majority, at least the ones that are connected to the type of work that we're engaged in, to address some sort of societal issue or challenge or concern. And in order to do that effectively, especially when we are looking at very specific populations, very specific audiences that we're engaging with, and we're looking to be involved with to have impact in their experience in life and their experiences in space and in community. If we're utilizing a software, even as a software is utilized for how we apply for funds or how our responses to an application for funds are viewed, if we're utilizing software or software is being utilized that is not mindful of diversity, does not consider diversity, does not consider those areas and issues that are an inherent part of some of the areas of focus for our nonprofits, that's problematic. It's missing, it's going to miss the mark, it's going to misdirect, it's going to ignore, gloss over. And that's a challenge that has to be addressed and has to be first recognized so that it can be addressed. And as we've talked about before, there's an added challenge of there is not a universal regulation of organizations and entities, funders, utilizing AI. What tools are they using? Are those tools that are that inherent and embedded within them is this mindfulness of the diversity of society and community and engagement. So thank you for sharing that example and that relatively recent example of this is still a work in progress. This is absolutely still a work in progress. Philanthropy.com has a article that actually came out back in August, and it's entitled "How Nonprofits Can Use AI Well and Avoid Pitfalls." And I like the wording because I think it very plainly states where we as a society, where we are when it comes to AI and nonprofits. And what the author says is nonprofits can't afford to fall behind the curve of learning and adopting AI. This is not a fad. This has fundamentally changed how our world works. The nonprofit sector has not only an opportunity, but a responsibility to rise to the occasion. A responsibility. And I would venture to add to that, it's not just the nonprofit sector, it's all of us, but especially those of us that work in consulting spaces or consider ourselves to be experts in our field. We have to get a grasp and an understanding of AI and its implications in our work. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. And I would say that this is not the time to do business as usual, but to understand how AI works. And so, as I think of the role of nonprofits, like I said, we have a very unique opportunity to really carve out a space that is really just ours. And not only just carve out a space and that's just ours, but to really take a stand, when it comes to what's right and what's wrong. We know that large corporations are going to do what they do. We know that they're in it for the dollar, they're in it for the profit. This is a capitalist society. And so when we understand what AI, how AI can disrupt or has disrupt, I would say that it has completely furthered and pushed along this capitalist idea that humans are just commodity that's just used to farm data. And so I am more than a data point. We as human beings, we understand we have a heart, we have a soul, we have a purpose here, and it's not just to feed us a machine for data. But it seems as though these are what these large language models are doing. I wrote another blog where I talked about how this whole freemium idea that you would go onto a platform for free, you would sign up and you would use it and you would create or generate or do all these great things. And then all of a sudden, after 30 days, they would say, oh, after you're so invested, personally, time wise, and just emotionally, they want to then charge you, and so, you're kind of, into this whole pattern of needing to be a part of it. And so you sign up and you agree. But what you're turning over is you're turning over your data, your likeness, what you like, what you don't like, how you feel, what you're doing, what your family's doing, and it's all at a cost. And so I believe that nonprofits have this unique responsibility to then say, wait a minute, human beings are more than data to be mined. We're here for a reason. So I wanted to kind of talk about how it's very critical that nonprofits, small businesses really get on board, because if you think about the larger organizations or larger nonprofits even that have access to money and technology and talent, they have the ability to take over. So now the currency right now is not dollars, it's time and it's energy and it's your attention. So I thought about how there was a Twitter user that talked about how there was this big heist of followers, users on a platform. And basically what he did is he showed us how he was able to steal followers and users from a huge platform from his competitor. So what he did with no or little technology, he created like these chat bots that were actually told to then go out and be influencers. So you have these chat bots who are programmed to go out and influence. So if you think you're engaging in a person, you're literally engaging with a chat bot. He also talked about how he was able to steal 3.6 million people or traffic from a competitor. And what he did was he was able to go on to the competitor's website. He was able to export the site map from the website. He then turned all of the URLs from all of the from the website into articles. So he literally created 1,800 articles off of this one competitor's website. And then he was able to use those articles and turn traffic away from his competitor. And he was able to do that in a matter of like hours. And so if you think about how he was able to steal 3.6 million traffic patterns, or however you count that, to a website in not even a day. Imagine what you can do if you have, people who are doing this all the time. And so it kind of concerns me when I see all of the content that's being created, all of the ability to create these chat bots to go and influence people's decisions, how small nonprofits are just kind of struggling with getting one or two posts up. You know what I mean? Or having traffic, a small pattern of traffic to our websites. You have these large corporations that can create content to drive traffic away from us to them. So it's concerning. And so I think part of the issue or part of the solution that what we can do as nonprofits is to create these curated spaces, these spaces that are sacred, spaces that are trusted and protected. And when I say spaces, I'm thinking membership spaces or like your discords where you have to be able to sign up and who's a part of it. Trusted people who lead these spaces, like you and I, who then vet content, vet people who come in and really create real content that they can use. If you think of the ability to create content in a matter of seconds, and there's no accountability of that content, there's no vetting of that content, people just want to get content out there to get followers and traffic. For people like you and I who really care about making a difference, I think it's going to be an opportunity actually for us to say, you know what, let's really end this whole sea of the internet where you don't know what is real, these deep fakes and these videos that are led by AI and these voiceovers that are not true humans. We can create more humanistic, more um um I guess sacred spaces where a lot of the other spaces don't even have access to.
I'm so glad you brought that up. You shared a number of things. I want to go back a little bit. I highlighted an article that was on philanthropy.com, and it wasn't the author, it was the author referencing Mr. Chappelle, who was actually the vice president of Donor Search, which is another known tool for looking for funding that nonprofits utilize. And he goes on to say many of the things that you just said. He reiterates how the most precious commodity of AI's presence and prevalence now in this nonprofit space is time, how it has freed up so much, it can, and for some has freed up so much time to be able to increase productivity and the opportunity to find funding, find information, do work. So also he talks about how the bias and how we have to be so careful because it's out there and it's easy. Just like let's go with ChatGPT, which is the mainstream, most known, I would say, I would venture to say, a tool that the general public will utilize to experience and utilize AI. But where do they get the information from?
Yeah.
what's their policy on ethics? Do they have a mindfulness of DEI? Or do they have a mindfulness of economics and income and how that comes into play with lived experience as we're doing searches and putting information in? And also something else that you have said, and I'm not sure if we've really dug in too deep, that what happens when we put information in? When you sign up for a ChatGPT account or when you sign up for an account, you have created a digital footprint that can be that identifies to you. So as
Yeah.
you user are putting information into these systems, what happens to that information? Have you read that small print? What does that mean? And if you're doing it not only as an individual, but as an organization, utilizing it and you're putting information in, perhaps client information or perhaps privilege information for your whatever space you're working in, what happens to that information? So it's highly important that we are mindful of not only that AI exists, mindful of how it exists, mindful of how we utilize it, and then mindful of the tools that we're utilizing. Where does it get its content from? And I love the terminology that you use, sacred spaces. There are so many platforms, and they more develop every day of
Mhm.
platforms of how you can tap into helpful AI empowered platforms, but they're not all the same.
Right.
And do we necessarily know from a nonprofit space, and it's not just from a nonprofit space, but from any space of utilizing AI, do we know where these organizations, these entities, these platforms get their information from, get their content from that we're looking to, and how do we vet that? And I don't know if we necessarily have an answer to that. There isn't an entity that is a vetting system to confirm, like GuideStar that you can look at. If you've never heard of a nonprofit and you want to know if they're legit, you can go to GuideStar and see if you can find anything on them and look at their previous I-90s and get a perspective of something that of an organization that was unfamiliar to you.
Yeah.
But are you aware of anything like that? Anything that exists like that within this AI space? Some sort of trusted platform that you could put in the name of another platform, perhaps, to say, well, how does it get its information, or what sort of measures or ethics are incorporated into how this particular platform works over another? Does anything like that exist that you're aware of?
Such a great question, Angeline. And so I've thought very deeply about that. The answer is no, but there might be sources out there. I just haven't seen them. There are some that I would go to for, actually, let me take that back a little bit. So, all tech is human. So if you go to alltechishuman.com, they do have a database of what they call vetted websites that are what they say to their standards, doing things the right way. So I'm not sure of their vetting process though, but with All Tech is Human being one of the leaders of ethics and responsible tech in general, I would say that they do have a really good track record of being making sure and holding accountable and doing the work of responsible AI. So if you go to their database, if you go to their website, they do have a database. But these are websites that organizations can sign up for. So your organization can go on to their platform and ask to be a part, and then they'll put you on their Airtable. So they do have that. But in terms of like, where do I go to find my trusted sources? Like for news, for example, or I want to make sure this was not generated by AI. I don't really
Mhm.
know of a space like that. And I also wanted to talk about, you mentioned at the beginning of your question how you're not really sure how these tools get their information. And so just understanding a little bit of how these large language models work, they all work differently. They're all trained differently. Some actually I've learned is that it trains off of your content that you put in. So the more you use it, the more smarter it gets, the more content, more data it has. But what it also does is it uses these experts out in the field. So you being an expert of community development, for example, they may ask you or pay you to then go in and do the reinforcement training. So you being the expert, it may ask you, or you may prompt a tool to say, hey, what are the top problems in this community? And if it gives you information that you don't agree with because you're the expert, you would go then and correct it. So they have experts that go and do, and I'm not sure if this is the correct term, but more like reinforcement training. So they train on that, they train on all of our data. And so you being the expert can have biases. You may not know everything about that field or subject matter. But there is that reinforcement training that these tools use as well.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for giving more insight into how AI platforms get their content. You know, that the content comes from somewhere, and then that content, as we're utilizing the term reinforced through various measures. And again, that human component, or maybe a counter content that can go in to help give a broader perspective of a broader possibility of perspective that can be generated from an AI platform. So
Yes.
that's helpful to understand. So, Dr. Jones, we could just continue to go on and on and on about AI and its role, its influence, how it works, how it shows up in nonprofit spaces. But really, our conversations are not intended to be an answer to all things AI in nonprofit spaces in this particular episode, or in community development in in a previous episode, or education in a previous episode. But just to provide some thought, to have some dialogue, to create some mindfulness amongst ourselves and our colleagues about AI and how it is showing up in our professional spaces. So I want to thank you again for the time that you have taken to share more insight and perspective on AI, and for this episode, AI in the nonprofit space. Again, we can continue to go so much deeper, and there are still questions that are held, still things that we're wondering about. I'm sure those who are listening in are wondering about as well. We won't be able to get all of those answers because they're in the development stage anyway. Um, but I'm really appreciative of this opportunity to, again, explore, to do a cursory initial exploration of this topic, and its relevancy in spaces that we navigate. So thank you for that. Um, as we prepare to close out this conversation, and this is our last of our March series on AI, and as you reflect on the conversations we had the first Friday in March, we talked about AI in general, just an introduction to AI and what it is. The second conversation, we talked about AI in education and how it's showing up, with more of a focus on within the adult space with adult education. Though we did touch on elementary, pre-K as well, but just how it's showing up in our educational spaces. Our third conversation, we looked at AI and community development and how it was showing up in various spaces of community development. That included transportation, that included workforce development. We revisited again education and training and preparedness within the United States. We also talked about how this is not just in the US, but this is a worldwide movement of the utilization of AI. And then you come to today, we're talking about AI in nonprofit spaces. As you reflect on this entire series that we've done, what stands out most for you? What would be your concluding thoughts to share with those who are taking this journey with us of these deeper dive conversations into AI? What would you like to leave us with as we've entered into these spaces, entered into these conversations and these topics?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. First and foremost, I would say, and this seems very cliche-ish and very obvious, but stay human. Keep humanity involved in technology. Understand that this is, and I've said this before, a socio-technical concern. So socio in that it affects every single part, every single aspect that we are involved in, everything that we touch. We're going to see a lot of advancements that are coming out within the next couple of months. Wearable, small technology products that we can use like as phones, but we use more specialty kind of devices that are going to come out that can do things like predict if we are we liable to have a heart attack, or can predict if we're going to need glasses within the next couple of years, or can predict our health concerns, legal concerns, and these are coming out at the speed of light. I would say just protect the human side of what we do, even though there's even devices that can sense our brain activity and predict what we're going to be thinking. These things are to some people scary, but I would say as long as we understand that we have to keep the human heart, involved and centered, and let that guide us. There's so many things that are at our fingertips that are quick and easy that we haven't been able to have before. Things like open source models that are not they're not monitored, that are not kept, that are not they don't have guardrails. And so the mind can just imagine what some of these models can do. So what I would say is be responsible. This is all of our fight. This is all of our concern. So get involved, learn as much as you can, learn how these models work and how they use humans as data to then fuel these tools. So don't be afraid of AI, but know that we are the ones who guide this mission. Corporations, they have a lot of money, nonprofits have the mission, but the people are the ones who drive this thing forward. And as long as we keep humanity involved and at the forefront of technology, then I think that society will be okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Dr. Naketa Jones, thank you for, again, your contribution to this conversation, your leadership in this conversation. So appreciated. For those of you who have taken time to listen to this webinar and our other webinars, thank you. And we hope that there has been something that has been shared, something that has been discussed, something that has been questioned or pondered that has sparked your interest as well. And we hope that you will be responsive to becoming more aware of AI and how AI has impact and has engagement in the spaces where you work. We want you to know that the month of March, as we start off in our first webinar and shared, was dedicated to having conversations about AI and how AI is showing up in our professional spaces. Though this is the last Friday in March, we want to continue to have conversations. So please do not think that Dr. Jones is going to be a stranger. She is not going to be a stranger. We will continue to have opportunities for conversation and engagement about AI and AI's relevancy and presence in the work that we do. And we hope that you will again join us and be a part of that. Please feel free to send questions, comments, thoughts, perspectives. You can email that to us. You can leave it in the chat. But we are going to continue to dig even deeper and even more specifically into AI and how AI impacts and influences the work that is done within our respective spaces, and specifically here with C3S Consulting. So again, If this is a topic that you would like to dig deeper into, you are welcome to reach out to us, and perhaps we'll schedule another time, Dr. Jones, to have some more conversation with more of our colleagues.
I would
I
love it.
want to say thank you to Dr. Dale Gines, who joined us for our last webinar. I want to say thank you to those who have watched and provided feedback and questions and comments regarding our topic. Continue to stay engaged. Again, thank you for joining us for our coffee and chat. We look forward to having more of these on the topic of AI and also on other key topics that are important in the space that we work. Why? Because we are committed to doing the work. And in order to do the work and to do it effectively and efficiently, we have to be aware and informed of what's happening out in society that's impacting our work and impacting those who we serve. And that's what we do. So thank you for joining us. We look forward to you joining us for our next coffee and chat. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.